matang, bayu menyapa dedaun ara. Pemanis kata selamat datang, awal bismillah pembuka bicara. Sebelum memulakan majlis pada pagi ini, kami akan memainkan lagu wawasan setia warga UiTM. Hadirin dijemput untuk menyanyi bersama.
Bersatu kita warga UiTM, kita bangsa perkasa, taat dan setia untuk negara, penuh semangat wajar. Kita jangan mudah terluka, pengorbanan perjuangan anak bangsa. Kita
Yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Ahmad Sazali Hamzah, Rektor UiTM Cawangan, Selangor. Yang berbahagia Profesor Teknologis Dr. Haji Mohamad Kamal Hj.Harun, Penolong Naib Canselor Pendidikan Berterusan Swasta. Yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Saifullah Haji Abdullah, Pengarah Pusat Asasi UiTM. Yang berusaha Profesor Madya Teknologis Dr. Sabayanah binti Bacok, Pengerusi Majlis Pengetua UiTM Cawangan, Selangor, mewakili Timbalan Rektor Hal Ehwal Pelajar. Yang berusaha Dr. Ikhwan Naim Maknawi, Timbalan Pengarah Hal Ehwal Akademik, Penyelidikan dan Inovasi. Yang berusaha Encik Zaidi Yaakob, Timbalan Pengarah Hal Ehwal Pelajar dan ICAN. Yang berusaha Teknologis Dr. Nur Hafizah Kasmuri, Timbalan Pengarah Pembangunan dan Kelestarian. Yang berusaha Encik Mahadi Kamaluddin, Pengetua Kolej Kediaman Dahlia dan Tualang. Pengetua-pengetua Kolej UiTM Cawangan, Selangor, kaki tangan akademik dan pentadbiran Pusat Asasi UiTM. Seterusnya, Barisan Jawatan Kuasa Perwakilan Kolej Sesi 2021-2022 dan saudara-saudari yang dihormati sekalian. Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Terlebih dahulu, marilah kita panjatkan rasa syukur kehadrat Ilahi kerana dengan izinnya dapat kita berkumpul dalam majlis pada pagi ini. Selamat datang saya ucapkan kepada hadirin dan hadirat ke webinar Kepimpinan dan Pengurusan Organisasi 2021. Untuk makluman, objektif utama webinar pada kali ini adalah untuk melatih barisan kepimpinan pelajar di peringkat kolej, iaitu Jawatan Kuasa Perwakilan Kolej dalam kemahiran berorganisasi di samping kerja berpasukan serta penerapan nilai murni selaku pemimpin pelajar. Webinar ini akan berlangsung selama 2 hari dengan pelbagai pengisian serta info yang berguna. Bagi memberkati majlis, dijemput Al-Fadil Ustaz Ahmad Jamil bin Jaafar untuk memimpin bacaan doa. Majlis mempersilakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Al-Fatihah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Maliki Yaumiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Marilah kita bersama-sama mengaminkan doa yang akan dibacakan bagi memohon keberkatan dan kerahmatan agar majlis kita pada hari ini berjalan dengan lancar dan memenuhi objektif yang disasarkan. Kepada yang bukan beragama Islam, bolehlah berdoa dengan cara masing-masing, InsyaAllah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahillazi bini'matihi tatimmus salihat. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulina al-amin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma antal azizul jalil. Kami merafakkan rasa kesyukuran kepadamu, Ya Allah, kerana telah mengizinkan kami untuk menghadiri program webinar Kepimpinan dan Pengurusan Organisasi 2021 Pusat Asasi UiTM Cawangan Selangor Kampus Dengkil pada hari ini. Ya Allah, Ya Tuhan kami, jadikanlah barisan kepimpinan dan pengurusan Pusat Asasi ini sebagai wahana dalam membentuk perpaduan, mesyuarah, pertukaran idea dan pendapat serta menjadi medium untuk menyumbangkan buah fikiran, tenaga serta sokongan ke arah peningkatan kualiti kepimpinan dan pengurusan institusi kami. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, berkatilah usaha kami. Mudah-mudahan dengan ini barisan kepimpinan dan pengurusan kami dapat menjalankan tugas dan amanah dengan penuh tanggungjawab, mempunyai keyakinan diri yang tinggi, ketabahan yang padu dan bersedia mencurahkan bakti kepada institusi yang tercinta ini, sekaligus menjadi barisan kepimpinan dan pengurusan yang cemerlang, berketerampilan dan berwibawa dalam segenap segi. Ya Aziz, Ya Razzaq, Ya Karim, jadikanlah kami dari kalangan hamba-hamba-Mu yang bersyukur dan taat melaksanakan perintah-Mu. Jauhilah kami, Ya Allah, dari melanggari perintah-Mu. Padukanlah tenaga dan usaha kami untuk menggempur anjakan sikap dan pemikiran bagi mengharungi era teknologi dan globalisasi. Kurniakanlah kejua kepada kami kekuatan rohani dan jasmani, cetusan idea dan gerakan minda untuk terus menjana kecemerlangan dalam memantapkan kepimpinan dan pengurusan institusi kami ini. Allahumma ja'al jam'ana hadza jam'an marhuma wa tafarruqna min ba'dihi tafarruqan ma'suma. Allahumma inna na'udzubika minal barasi wal junun wal juzami wa min sayyi'il asqam. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina 'adzaban nar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa baraka wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Taqabbalallahu minna wa minkum. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Amin amin ya rabbal alamin. Majlis merakamkan jutaan terima kasih kepada Al-Fadil Ustaz Ahmad Jamil atas bacaan doa sebentar tadi. Semoga majlis kita pada pagi ini sentiasa berada di bawah naungan rahmatnya. Hadirin hadirat sekalian, adat berbahasa menyampaikan pesan, adat upacara menyampaikan ucapan. Majlis diteruskan dengan menjemput dan mempersilakan Yang Berbahagia Profesor Dr. Saifullah Haji Abdullah, Pengarah Pusat Asasi UiTM, untuk menyampaikan ucapan aluan. Majlis dengan penuh takzimnya mempersilakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Terima kasih saudari pengacara majlis, saudari Nur Azwani ya. Terima kasih Ustaz Ahmad Jamil yang telah membacakan doa tadi. Yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Ahmad Sazali Hamzah, Rektor UiTM Cawangan Selangor. Yang berbahagia Profesor Teknologis Dr. Haji Muhammad Kamal Hj.Harun, Penolong Naib Canselor Pendidikan Berterusan Swasta dan merupakan penceramah utama pada pagi ini. Wasmadya Teknologis Dr. Sabainah ya, mewakili Timbalan Rektor Hal Ehwal Pelajar UiTM Cawangan Selangor. Yang berusaha Encik Mahadi Kamaluddin, Pengetua Kampus Dengkil, merangkap pengurusi program pada hari ini. Yang berusaha Dr. Iwan Naim Maknawi, Timbalan Pengarah Akademik Pendidikan dan Inovasi. Yang berusaha Encik Zaidi Yaakob, Timbalan Pengarah Hal Ehwal Pelajar dan ICANN. Yang berusaha Teknologis Dr. Nur Hafizah Kasmuri, Timbalan Pengarah Pembangunan dan Kelestarian. Wakil-wakil barisan jawatan kuasa perwakilan Kolej 2021-2022, seluruh warga pusat asasi UiTM, semua pelajar yang saya kasih sekalian dan semua yang mengikuti siaran secara atas talian. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Alhamdulillah, saya panjatkan rasa syukur kehadrat Allah Subhanahu wa taala kerana kita dapat bersama-sama pada pagi ini walaupun di alam maya dalam majlis perasmian kursus kepimpinan dan pengurusan organisasi 2021 Pusat Asasi UiTM. Saya ingin mengucapkan terima kasih kepada kedua-dua jemputan kita, iaitu yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Ahmad Sazali Hamzah selaku Rektor UCS untuk kesediaan hadir untuk merasmikan program kita pagi ini, dan juga kepada yang berbahagia Profesor Teknologis Dr. Mohamad Kamal Hj.Harun sebagai penceramah utama atas kesudian berkongsi ilmu pada pagi ini. Sebenarnya saya sangat teruja dan juga beruntung duduk di platform pagi ini dengan dua rakan saya sebenarnya 34 tahun yang lepas kami sebenarnya sama-sama mendaftar pada hari yang sama di UiTM Cawangan Pahang, kampus Kuantan dan sekarang ni kedua-dua beliau ni telah menjadi orang-orang yang hebat di dalam bidang masing-masing Prof Sazali Hamzah merupakan pakar dalam bidang kimia iaitu kimia organik dan sintesis yang memang diingatilah oleh semua pelajar-pelajar sama ada yang daripada lepasan SPM ataupun yang telah bergraduasi daripada asasi dan manakala Profesor Mohamad Kamal Harun adalah dalam bidang kimia juga, electrochemistry, ataupun sekarang di bidang dia adalah corrosion jadi kalau kita lihat dua contoh rakan saya ni yang hebat ni, mereka ni mempunyai kekuatan dalam bidang pentadbiran berbeza-beza walaupun mereka ini adalah daripada bidang sains kita panggil chemistry, dua-dua chemistry saya daripada bidang fizik nanoteknologi. Tapi kalau kita lihat maksudnya sesiapa sahaja pun boleh jadi seorang pemimpin walaupun dalam bidang sains ke kimia ke matematik ke dan sebagainya, apalagi lah kalau pelajar-pelajar dalam bidang management ataupun social science undang-undang ke TESOL dan sebagainya. Jadi yang penting itu adalah asas yang kita tanamkan dari sejak awal. Okey, dan itulah tujuan kita pada hari ini dan 2 hari yang akan datang untuk kita sama-sama mengikutilah program-program yang kita anjurkan di sini Dan di antara tujuan program ini adalah untuk memberi pendedahan asas kepimpinan yang betul dan sama ada di peringkat kolej ataupun di peringkat yang lebih tinggi Jadi saya rasa yang telah terpilih sebagai JPK jawatan kuasa kolej ni, jawatan kuasa perwakilan kolej Pusat Asasi ini untuk pengetahuan Prof Rektor dan juga Prof Kamal sebab kita tidak ada MPP. Jadi di kampus Nikel ni pelajar asasi hanyalah kita lantik sebagai JPK jawatan kuasa perwakilan kolej yang memang akan mengambil alih sebenarnya banyak tugas-tugas MPP kalau sekiranya di kampus Shah Alam dan di kampus-kampus yang lain Jadi saya harap semua yang hadir di sini JPK, pelajar-pelajar yang mengikuti secara maya dan juga staf yang kita jemput semua di sini untuk kita sama-sama siapa-siapa pelajar-pelajar JPK dan juga pelajar-pelajar yang hadir ini sangat-sangat penting asas kepimpinan tetapi untuk staf atau pensyarah-pensyarah yang ada mungkin untuk refresh semula ataupun untuk menambah mana-mana yang kurang dari segi kepimpinan kita di sini sebab asas kepimpinan ini sangat-sangat banyak mungkin akan disentuh oleh pencerah ucap utama banyaklah dia melebihi 10 ataupun 5 ataupun 7 style kepimpinan di situ mungkin pelajar-pelajar boleh mengikutilah seperti coaching style, autocratic style, laissez-faire style, democratic transformation style jadi kita pun pelajar-pelajar kalau sekiranya belum lagi mengikuti kursus kepimpinan yang sebenarnya hari ini bermulanya lah saya harap pelajar-pelajar untuk trigger, baca dan mengikutilah kepimpinan tersebut. menjadi pemimpin ni bukan menjadi pemimpin college sahaja ataupun pemimpin universiti atau pemimpin negara, tapi yang penting adalah pemimpin kepada diri sendiri ya. Jadi kepimpinan ni adalah from inside, daripada diri sendiri, kemudian barulah kita dapat memimpin organisasi yang lebih besar di situ lah ya. Dan saya harap ya, agar kepimpinan JPK ini dapat memberikan perhatian serius lah dalam aspek kebajikan pelajar-pelajar, terutama di musim pandemik ni. Mereka ada banyak masalah di kampung ke di rumah kediaman masing-masing ataupun sebahagian di kolej ya. Ini adalah satu tugas yang besar ya, untuk pihak JPK bersama-sama dengan pengurusan pusat asasi ya, untuk memberi tumpuan ya, walaupun secara maya, tapi kita sama-sama membantu di antara satu sama lain ya. Dan hadirin dan sekalian, saya berharap dengan adanya program ini dapat memberikan pengetahuan mengenai kepimpinan ya. Seterusnya untuk JPK, pelajar-pelajar dan semua yang hadir yang dapat mencetuskan idea-idea yang bernas untuk menambah baik dalam sistem penyelesaian masalah sekiranya ada dan aktiviti-aktiviti yang akan dilaksanakan ya. Gunakanlah kepercayaan dan peluang yang telah diberikan ini sebaik mungkin. Semoga berkat usaha dan kerja keras dengan ilmu yang betul dapat memikul tanggungjawab ini dan mampu memberikan impak positif seterusnya membentuk insaniah yang tinggi dalam diri masing-masing dan juga organisasi ya. Dan sebelum saya mengakhiri ucapan ini, saya ucapkan sekali lagi tahniah dan sabas kepada penganjur ya, kursus pada hari ini, 2 hari ini, kerana telah merancangkan program yang sangat-sangat baik terutamanya untuk pelajar-pelajar kita yang masih muda ni daripada sekolah ya, dan kita haruslah gilap dengan baik supaya mereka mendapat gambaran yang sebenar apakah sebenarnya leadership di situ ya. Dan saya ucapkan juga tahniahlah kepada semua JPK yang terpilih. Okey, saya tahu bahawa ramai yang memohon untuk menjadi JPK ni ya. Mengikut pengetahuan saya ada lebih kurang 300 pelajar, tetapi yang terpilih tidak ramai, 10% saja. Jadi yang lain tu jangan kecewa ya untuk tidak dipilih JPK, sebab kita ada banyak lagi platform-platform untuk kita berbakti ataupun menyumbang tenaga kita ya. Di pusat asasi ini biasanya kita ada banyak kelab-kelab yang diwujudkan ya, sehingga 70-80 kelab. Jadi saya harap pelajar-pelajar yang tidak terpilih dalam JPK dapat juga memimpin ya kelab-kelab yang diwujudkan bersama-sama dengan penasihat kelab di kalangan pensyarah ya. Jadi tidak kiralah sama ada di mana kita, yang penting kita ikhlas untuk sama-sama membangunkan diri kita sendiri dan juga membangunkan kawan-kawan kita seterusnya universiti sini lah ya. Dan harapan saya program ini bukanlah yang pertama kali dan yang terakhir. InsyaAllah saya cadangkan kalau boleh untuk penganjur menganjurkan siri kepimpinan pelajar di sinilah ya. Mungkin hari ini Prof Mohamad Kamal Harun akan beri ucapan. Okey, next time kita akan jemput Prof Rektor juga yang berpengalaman dari segi pentadbiran akademik dan juga pentadbiran yang lain ya. Dan kita banyak tokoh-tokoh di UiTM ini untuk kita manfaatkan lah ya. Dan saya harap apabila semua pelajar-pelajar keluar atau bergraduate daripada pusat asasi telah menimba bukan kecerdasan akademik saja, tetapi juga kecerdasan bakat. Itulah yang kita impikanlah sebagai pengurusan di pusat asasi UiTM. Dan sekali lagi saya ucapkan terima kasih kepada semua jawatan kuasa penganjur, dan juga sekali lagi saya ucapkanlah kepada Profesor Rektor Profesor Ahmad Sazali Hamzah, walaupun saya tahu sibuk, dapat juga meluangkan masa untuk hadir dan merasmikan program kita pagi hari ini. Dan saya akhiri dengan ucapan serakat pantun yang telah diberikan kepada saya lah, saya bacakan saja ya. Sejambak bunga tanda penghargaan, segala budi menjadi ingatan. Terima kasih kami ucapkan, teruskan berjuang mencapai kejayaan. Sekian, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Terima kasih.
Majlis merakamkan jutaan terima kasih kepada Yang Berbahagia Profesor Dr. Saifullah Haji Abdullah atas ucapan aluan sebentar tadi. Para hadirin yang dihormati sekalian, kini tibalah ke acara kemuncak majlis perasmian webinar kepimpinan dan Pengurusan Organisasi 2021. Dengan ini, majlis dengan berbesar hati menjemput dan mempersilakan Yang Berbahagia Profesor Dr. Ahmad Sazali Hamzah, Rektor UiTM Cawangan Selangor, bagi menyampaikan ucapan dan seterusnya merasmikan webinar Kepimpinan dan Pengurusan Organisasi 2021. Dengan segala hormatnya, majlis mempersilakan.
Terima kasih Saudari Ketua Majlis. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Yang berbahagia Prof Kamal ni kawan lama. Prof Kamal, PNC, Prof Saibullah, pengarah asasi, timbalan-timbalan pengarah, Dr. Ikhwan, Cik Zaidi, Dr. Nafiza, Wakil Timbalan Rektor HCP, PM Dr. Sabainah, Barisan Pengurusan Pentadbiran, Akademik Kampus dan seluruh warga Pusat Asasi UiTM. Saya kalau baca teks ni panjang ni. Saya nak rumuskan lah. Kita buat cara santai hari Sabtu ni. Seperti kata Prof Saifullah tadi, dia pelajar ni bila dia masuk ke mana-mana institusi pendidikan tinggi kan, pertama dia dapat ilmu lah, ilmu dia segi knowledge tadi kan, subjek engineering dan sebagainya. And the second one is soft skill ni. Yang ni yang saya rasa Prof Kamal akan kupaskan nantilah. Beliau ada pengalaman kat AKAB dan sebagainya. I think soft skill ni paling penting sekarang ni. Sebab majikan dia nak tengok dari segi kita punya flexibility, creativity kan, strategic vision kita, problem solving kita, communication skills. Ini yang perlu ada di kalangan pelajar-pelajar lah. Saya rasa yang tu yang paling penting, soft skill ni. Kadang-kadang bila kita terbuka ada seorang tu ada staff student ataupun dapat first class kan, tapi dia tak ada soft skill. So saya rasa yang ni yang mungkin Prof Kamal akan tekankan nanti. Dan untuk makluman semua, program-program yang melibatkan aktiviti pelajar ni biasanya kita akan sokong lah. Kita akan cari duit walaupun duit tak ada, so kita akan cari duit. InsyaAllah, tak jangan risau. So saya rasa anything yang program kaitan dengan learning process, Prof Kamal pun tahu, dia ex-TNCA tu, kita tak akan orang kata apa, tak belanja, kita akan belanja lah untuk pastikan student keluaran UiTM ni dia equip dengan apa orang kata ilmu yang cukup lah. Tu yang saya kata tadi tu, yang soft skill tu penting tu saya rasa sekarang ni. So jangan lupa lah kepada staff-staff atau pelajar-pelajar yang telah dipilih Kata Prof Saifullah tadi daripada 360 lebih dipilih kan. Mungkin nanti ada program lain lah buat cara santai dan sebagainya. Okay. Saya itulah saya bila kita lihat sekarang pandemik ni kan, kita pun tak tahulah bila boleh berakhir kan. Katanya nak this year, rasanya memang kan ada lah. Nak kata nak solve problem pandemik ni susah nak cakap. Even COVID ni pun dia dah start to mutate dan sebagainya. Kita tak tahu any specific drug yang boleh bantu kan. So that's why bagi pelajar in UiTM and also in many FPTA lah, I think and all over the world kan, program kan, I think it's a very challenging time lah for education ni. Kita tak tahu apa yang berlaku tau. Mungkin dari in the future ni silap-silap virtual university akan keluar je. You know, dia tak ada dah normal university. So I think perhaps student pun kena plan kot. And then itulah saya pun kadang baca pening kepala juga what will happen to the education punya landscape kita lah. Hopefully benda ni akan berkurangan lah, nak kata hilang tu. I think COVID will still be here lah. So jadi kan saya difahamkan penganjuran webinar ini adalah tujuan untuk pembenahan kenaan pengurusan organisasi kepada student leaders, which is very good, especially kepada JPK yang mana merupakan pemimpin pelajar lah yang jadi tulang belakang untuk menjalankan aktiviti di kampus asasi. Okay. Tahniah dan syabas saya ucapkan kepada semua JPK telah terpilih. Dan saya rasa setiap individu ni yang dipilih ni dia mampu mencapai kecemerlangan melalui pembinaan ilmu serta penerapan nilai murni agar menjadi graduan profesional. Itu yang sangat penting tu. So make sure bila kita masuk dalam mana universiti, kita menjalani transformasi iaitu kita punya dalaman tu paling penting tu. So maksudnya you akan jadi pelajar yang boleh berfikir, yang boleh menjalankan tugas dengan baik. Saya rasa tu elemen-elemen tu yang orang kata apa, intrinsic values lah. Ni kena ada ni. So saya rasa that would be good. Okay. Dan kepimpinan merupakan salah satu aspek penting dalam pengurusan organisasi yang melibatkan perancangan, pergerakan dan pelaksanaan. Jadi saya rasa program seperti ini memang akan banyak membantu pelajar. Jadi kan pelajar ni kadang-kadang dia sepatutnya dia try to lead any club ke organisasi, because that will orang kata apa, train kita punya orang kata apa, budaya kita lah untuk memimpin. Saya rasa tu penting tu. Okay, saya juga ingin mengucapkan syabas, tahniah kepada Jabatan Penganjur kerana telah berjaya menganjurkan webinar ini. Dan nak menganjur ni walaupun online tapi bukannya mudah kita nak coordinate kan. Jadi harapan saya ialah supaya those yang attend kursus ini really mendapat manfaat daripada Prof Kamal dan juga penceramah lain, agar dia jadi orang kata apa, dia beri impact lah. Saya rasa penting tu impact tu. So make sure kadang-kadang ni kita sebagai pelajar, kita tak boleh nak dapat semua ilmu tu. Jadi program macam ni lah yang boleh orang kata apa ni, memberi kita some info lah, especially on perkara tadi yang Prof pula sebut tadi tu. Saya orang kimia, Prof Kamal kimia, saya pula fizik. Dia bila kita fikir balik, buat apa lah nak buat masuk dalam pengurusan kan. Tapi kadang-kadang ni kita terpaksa melakukan pengurusan juga. We need to manage jugalah ya. Walaupun ada yang tak suka dan sebagainya. It takes a lot of time, a lot of reading dan sebagainya. Tapi insyaAllah the more knowledge that you have, the more complete person you become. Tu yang paling penting tu, especially pada pelajar ni. So kalau boleh pelajar ni bila pergi temuruga kerja nantilah, career kan, saya rasa benda-benda yang knowledge yang lain-lain ni lah akan membantu ni. Contohnya kalau pelajar dia boleh pergi temuruga, dia boleh berbahasa Mandarin, English dengan Malay. Itu dia akan dah ada kata pasal full factor lah. Atau pelajar yang boleh cakap bahasa Arab, bahasa Jerman. Ni semua ni UiTM kita offer kan. So that's why kalau boleh try to get some extra knowledge. Itu yang membuat kita ni menyelah compare dengan graduan daripada APT yang lain. So that's why program macam ni saya rasa memanglah elok diadakan. Memang di UCS pun kita selalu buat program dengan pelajar. Baru ni kita buat program dengan industri, ramai industri terlibat. So that's why dia beri pendahan yang baru lah. So insyaAllah saya harapkan dengan ada program ini yang diajukan oleh Pusat Sesi ini, teruslah kata apa, buat program macam ni. Sebab this is the only way during pandemik yang kita boleh berinteraksi dengan pelajar. Nak dapat face to face ni, learning process ni memang susah lah. Unless ada memang terdesak lah. So ambil peluang ni walaupun rasa sukar dan sebagainya. Yang ni lah yang boleh orang kata apa, kita guna medium untuk berinteraksi dengan kita punya pesyarah. So saya rasa setakat tu saja. Dengan lafaz Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, saya meresmikan program webinar Kepimpinan dan Pengurusan Organisasi 2021 Anjuran Pusat Sesi. Sekian, wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Profesor Dr. Ahmad Sazali Hamzah. Untuk makluman hadirin, montaj tersebut telah disediakan oleh Saudari Sarah Nadia Mohamad Nasib. Majlis merakamkan jutaan terima kasih kepada Yang Berbahagia Profesor Dr. Ahmad Sazali Hamzah atas kesudian merasmikan webinar Kepimpinan dan Pengurusan Organisasi 2021 pada hari ini. Dengan berakhirnya ucapan perasmian itu tadi, maka berakhirlah majlis kita pada pagi ini. Akhir kata, saya Nur Azwani Syafiqah, mantan Yang Dipertua JPK Sesi 2020-2021, mewakili ahli jawatan kuasa majlis, memohon 1000 kemaafan atas segala kesilapan sepanjang majlis ini berlangsung. Kalau ada sumur di ladang, boleh kita menumpang mandi. Kalau ada umur yang panjang, boleh kita berjumpa lagi. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sekian, terima kasih.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Professor Technologist Dr. Haji Muhammad Kamal bin Hj.Harun, Assistant Vice Chancellor of UiTM, Professor Dr. Ahmad Sazali Hamzah, Rector of UiTM Selangor, Professor Dr. Saifullah Haji Abdullah, Director of Center of Foundation Studies, Professors, Associate Professors, Doctors, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum and a very good day everyone. My name is Mohamad Firdaus bin Roslan, former Naib Dipertua of Jawatan Kuasa Perwakilan College of 2018 and 2019, your moderator for today. It has been such a beautiful day for us to be together in this wonderful event, specially dedicated to the newly appointed state leaders of UiTM Dengkio. For your information, webinar Kepimpinan dan Pengurusan Organisasi aims to cater those who are selected in becoming a part of the leadership lines of UiTM Dengkio. This includes Staff Resident College, SRK, Residential College Staff, class representatives, and the newly appointed Jawatan Kuasa Perwakilan College, JPK. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our speaker for today. As a former Deputy Vice Chancellor of Academic and International of University Technology Mara, UiTM, Professor Technologist Dr. Haji Muhammad Kamal bin Hj.Harun is one of the most influential people in the UiTM board. Throughout his 30 years of academic teaching, he has held various positions of leadership. Currently, he holds the position as Assistant Vice Chancellor of UiTM. A little background of his academic achievements: Professor Kamal earned his PhD from the University of Manchester's Institute of Science and Technology. He also attended Oxford Advanced Management and Leadership Program at Oxford University in October 2018. Now, without further ado, we would like to invite Yang Berbahagia, Professor Technologist Dr. Hj.Muhammad Kamal bin Hj.Harun, to give a speech on leadership and higher education. Please welcome.
Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera saya ucapkan kepada semua yang dapat bersama kita pada pagi ini. Yang saya hormati saudara Muhammad Firdaus selaku MC for this morning, Professor Dr. Ahmad Sazali Hamzah, my old friend, Rektor UiTM Selangor, Professor Dr. Saifullah Abdullah, also my very old friend, the pengarah of Pusat Asasi UiTM, ahli-ahli pengurusan Pusat Asasi, pelajar-pelajar yang saya hormati sekalian. Again, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera dan selamat pagi saya ucapkan kepada semua. Thank you for the very kind introduction, Saudara Muhammad Firdaus, and thank you also to the Tuan Kuasa penganjur yang telah sudi menjemput saya untuk berbicara pada pagi ini, berkongsi pengalaman sebenarnya. Bukan I don't intend to teach because I am learning myself all the way through, but my intention is to share my experiences and to relate most importantly to the theories of leadership that has been developed both in terms of intellectually and also spiritually, which I think is very important for us to address a real holistic understanding of the meaning of leadership. So I would like to be a little bit informal this morning, and I will try to spend my time as best as possible to make it clear what we mean by leadership and what is expected of leadership and what is the prerequisite needed to become a good leader. Yeah? So, Puan Nur Hikmah, can I request your help to put up the slide? I attempted it just now, but being Gen X, I always have problem. Not Gen X, baby boomers, older than Gen X actually. Okay, there you go. This would be the topic that I would wish to have a discourse on this morning. And I started off by saying higher education and leadership, and I deliberately put it in that sequence because I think leadership really needs a person to be highly educated. It's not an easy job, not an easy task. It cannot be handled by just anybody, but the person who has been trained in higher order thinking are the ones who are eligible to become leaders. So can we move on to the next one? Okay, for this morning, I would like to invite everybody to spend some time to discuss on these three fundamental topics that I think is pertinent for our discussion. First is, do we understand what is the meaning of higher education? Second is, what would be the purpose of higher education in higher education institutions like UiTM? And third is, why is it that I claimed higher education is important in leadership? So these are the three items I think worth considering, worth to spend our time on in shaping ourselves to lead or to lead an organization. Next, please. Now, if I were to relate what the nation has put up for higher education, especially on its purpose and its role, then I would relate it to the national national education policy, ataupun falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan. So in that falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan, there are two segments that was mentioned. First, it talks about what is the meaning of education, and secondly, what is the purpose of education. If I could read through this, according to falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan, education in Malaysia is an ongoing effort towards further developing the potentials of individuals. And every individual has got potential. We want to develop this in a holistic and integrated manner so as to produce individuals who are intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, and physically balanced and harmonious based on a firm belief and devotion to God. So that is the definition of education in the context of education. You have to be spiritually, you have to be intellectually developed, you have to be spiritually developed, and you have to be emotionally developed, and it has to be balanced and harmonious, and all this has to be based on a firm belief and devotion to God. But what is the purpose of this education? It says such an effort is designed to produce Malaysian citizens who are knowledgeable and competent, who possess high moral standards, and who are responsible and capable of achieving high level of personal well-being, as well as being able to contribute to the harmony and betterment of the family, the society, and the nation. So education specifically produces individuals who can basically empower the nation, harmonize the nation, and sustain a nation at large. Okay, so that's a very big role of education. So we go to the universities, we go to school, we go to universities to obtain this education, so that we become an empowered individual who can deliver the expectation as stated by the national education philosophy. Okay, next please. Now, from there, because the national education philosophy talks about education, and here we are in higher education, I always ask myself this question: what do we mean by higher education? What is higher about higher education? And there are a lot of literature that talks about the meaning of higher education. For example, the one in Oxford Tutorial, a book written by David Palfreeman, he was talking about the development of the individual's critical facilities. In other words, a person who have gone through higher education have got a very highly intellectual capability. Now, preparing for lifelong learning to serve the society as a knowledgeable and educated citizen. Talks about a person who is useful to the society. And then a starting point for a profession, you can be an engineer, you can be a lawyer, you can be an academic, but it is meant to produce a knowledgeable professional who thinks critically about the practice of the profession, constantly thinking about the profession, who understands meaning of his profession in relation to the society. What is his contribution to the society through his profession? So he keeps on thinking how to make it better, how to make it useful, how to make it impactful, meaningful, and especially for the benefit of the society. This is the part that the university focuses on when they mention about higher education. So you have education, and now you said you want to develop a higher order thinking among the students that comes from higher education. Okay. Now let's go and dwell a little bit on the meaning of intellectualism. Can we move on to the next, please? Okay, when we talk about intellectualism, I just simply Google up in the dictionary and really want to understand what is the meaning of intellectualism. According to Cambridge Dictionary, it says the ability to learn, understand, and make judgment. You have to learn, you understand, and then you make judgment or have opinions based on reason. There must be a reason behind all the judgment we make. Okay? And intelligence is the ability to think, reason, and understand instead of just doing things automatically or by instinct. That's according to Collins Dictionary. Yeah? And further to that, I will go on to some of the understanding of intellectualism, especially in the context of the religion, be it in Islam or in any religion. Can we move on to the next one? So it is talking about akal, especially if you talk about in an Islamic context, and most religion that I look at it, when they define intelligence, they're talking about intellect. So intellect, developing the akal or the reason, which is applied to man's knowledge of true nature of things and also to his power to perceive and to know. That's according to Imam Ghazali. And then this is a statement made by Muhammad Zaidi Ismail from Aikim, the book that I portrayed there. Man is differentiated from the rest of the animal by his akal. Akal, which is by nature spiritual, is maintained to be his essence and constitute his rational faculty. So akal is something that is special to human being. It may not be present, or rather it may be limited in other animals, but then it is very apparent in human being. And the third point is mentioned by Dr. Yusuf Dalhad. He says the term al-akal means reason, rationality, intellect, or intelligence, the antonym of which is stupidity or foolishness. So that's what we are focusing partly, other than the body of knowledge on the subject matter. Higher education means that you are also undergoing the development of your intelligence, your intellect, or your akal. Okay, next. So from there, according to Imam Al-Ghazali, the meaning of education is this: education is not limited to training the mind and filling with just information, but involve all aspects, intellectual, religious, moral, and physical, of the personality of the learner. You have to constantly observe yourself, whether are you developing your intellectualism, are you morally obligated, and how does that shape your personality? It is not enough to impart theoretical learning. That learning must be put in practice. All the things that you learn must be put in practice, and it must be guided by moral obligation. True learning is that which affects behavior and whereby the learner makes practical use of his knowledge. Okay, that is from the view of Imam Al-Ghazali. Okay, next please. And I look back at a book written by Paul Ashwin, and this is his view on the meaning of education. That is, knowledge is about a collective of knowledge rather than isolated individual facts, because isolated individual facts may not be meaningful until that individual facts is being applied to the society or to your living. But that will require you to connect it with other knowledge. Okay, bodies of knowledge have a structure that has been constructed over centuries by many different people. The different aspects of this knowledge gain their meaning from their position in the structure of knowledge, and so cannot be considered as a standalone fact. A standalone fact is just knowledge, but getting educated meaning putting that knowledge into context of things around you, so that it becomes useful, so that it becomes beneficial. Okay, so that's the engagement of the term education. This means that what students gain from engaging with this knowledge are new ways of seeing and interacting with the world. This means that students are fundamentally changed by their engagement with the knowledge. After they have learned the knowledge and able to put in context, they start seeing things in a more intellectual manner. Okay, rather than just adding additional information to an already fully formed entity. Okay, now let us try to digest this a little bit. It sounds very, very, very tough here, but let us try to digest. Let us try to look some example. Now, can we move on to the next one? So I said, what would be the best example I could relate to interpret what has been defined by Paul Ashwin in his definition of knowledge? Let's say, for example, we take Facebook. Okay, and we know that the development of Facebook is very much dependent on digital technology, computer, internet, programming, software, engineering, web technology, AR, VR, you name it, whatever. Those are the things that is required to get the Facebook going. But you must remember that Mark Zuckerberg, who started Facebook, was actually a liberal arts student who happened to be very passionately interested in computers, but he also studied ancient Greek intensively and in high school and was a psychology major. So the Facebook is the giant it is today, not just because of its technology or computer capabilities, but it has a lot to do with psychology, as they do in technology. In his own word, Facebook is much a psychology, sociology, and technology. In other words, you are actually enticing people who want to basically get involved. You are attracting people to jump into Facebook because they have got things to share. Psychologically, they think this is beneficial to share, but be careful with this. And that is where you have to be morally guided. You can pass the good stories, the right stories, the facts through Facebook, but you can also act otherwise and passing all the wrong stories, the not the right stories. So this has a lot to do with psychology. Okay, let's try to move on to the next one on the definition of knowledge and education. According to our local scholar, Syed Muhammad Nakib Alatas and Dr. Wan Mohamad Noor, Professor Dr. Wan Mohamad Noor, Wan Daud. According to him, the process of acquisition of knowledge is not education. If you just receive all the knowledge, that itself is not education. It's not yet an education. unless the knowledge that is required includes moral purpose that activates it in the one who acquires. In other words, you call it adab and action. Simplify it a little bit more. Education then is the right absorption of adab itself. In other words, the actualization of adab in individual self, composing society as collective entity, reflects the condition of justice, and justice itself is a reflection of wisdom. In other words, when you have knowledge, you must put within the right principle, the right context, so that the knowledge becomes useful, and that is what he termed as education. Putting the knowledge in the right context so that it becomes a useful thing for the society, a useful thing for the community, useful thing for yourself, and that would be the right action, that you act on the knowledge, and that requires education. Okay, so maybe we can go to the next example. Okay, being a chemist, I think Prof. Sazali and also Prof. Saifullah for that matter, we are quite familiar with nuclear reaction. Okay, we understand nuclear reaction, but we need knowledge on politics, psychology, for example, social science, business and marketing, competition, civic conscious and sustainable energy to translate this knowledge. Either one that has got moral purpose, which is producing energy out of this reaction, or one that perhaps construct destruction, which is, to me, is immoral. So what would be the context that would make us to decide whether we have to go on the moral purpose of the knowledge or the immoral purpose? That's education. So that is what we want to emphasize on the meaning of education. Putting the knowledge in the right context for the sake of the ummah, and if using it wrongly, then that is not really, you're not educated, quote unquote, if you were to use that knowledge for the wrong purpose. Okay, next. Another example, perhaps, which is quite close to us, knowledge in computer and programming. You have to add on the knowledge of sociology, social science, psychology, business, civic conscious, and sustainable world as well to translate this knowledge. If you make it into My Sejahtera, that's a public good. Yeah, it serves the community. But if you become a scammer, which using the same knowledge, that's something else that is immoral in nature. So really, the tough word here is education. Knowledge is something that you can acquire, but what do you do with that knowledge? That is the education part that produces you to become a high order thinking person, that makes you a person who will be committed towards using that knowledge for the right purposes, for the good purposes, for the harmony of the society. So that's important. Yeah. Okay. So now we go a little bit more advanced. Next fact, please. We talk about being educated, being intellectual, and there are two very important documents that talks about intellectual culture. The Yale Report, which was established in 1828, and also a book, The Essence of Liberal Arts, Liberal Education by Farouk Zakaria. He's a reporter, by the way, with CNN. And these are the things that they put in, the terms that they put in place. The two great points to begin an intellectual culture. When you want to become an intellectual, you have to have the discipline of mind, and you have to have the furniture of mind. Now, what do they mean by discipline of mind? Discipline of mind is about developing your akal. Okay, the art of fixing attention, listening. Okay, the art of directing the train of thought, organizing your thought from one point to another, to another, to another. Okay, the art of analyzing a subject proposed for investigation. The art of following with accurate discrimination. There are things that you can discriminate. There are things by your judgment, this is not right, but this is something that you must consider. The cause of the argument that you put in, balancing the evidence presented for the judgment to be made, awakening, elevating, controlling the imagination that you get out of your thinking, and skillfully arranging the treasures which memory gathers and guiding the powers of genius. So this is basically how you discipline your mind in order to develop your akal. And of course, the furniture of mind is about the subject matter, the content, the facts, the thing that you read in the book, and the ideas that you deem important, okay, in guiding in the subject matter. So there are two components basically you're going to have to put. First is how do you train your mind, how do you train your thinking, how do you discipline your thoughts, and then how do you put your subject matter into that context, okay? Now let's go on for a little bit more. And the concept of higher education, universities higher education, is all about training the minds, okay? To ensure that the graduate could possess a connected view of grasp of things and are intellectually methodological in pursuing intellectual excellence. In other words, the purpose is not just knowledge, but not just learning or acquirement, but rather the thought or the reasoning exercised upon the knowledge. So that is the main thing that we want to emphasize in higher education. And students, especially lecturers, we are talking both teachers and students here. This is what we have to design our curriculum to become. In other words, not only are we passing the facts and the information, but more importantly, the train of thoughts on what do we do with these facts? How do we act on these facts and information so that it will become a benefit to the society and the ummah? Okay, so and that is a part of the as Prof. Sazali mentioned, the soft skill part, or rather the core thing about education that we sometimes tend to take it lightly. Apparently, I mean, sometimes we don't put much effort in there because we are so busy in imparting with the knowledge. But more important is how this thing is being translated into action. That is why the university embarks on projects like Sulam, for example. You understand a technology. How do you put that technology in the society? And that ability to put the technology in society to a point where the society accepts it, the society benefits out of it, and that is the part of the education where you are trying to put the knowledge into context of the ummah. Yeah. So that part is where most of our universities' activities are also focusing on, so that we balance in terms of knowledge and the development of the students' intellectuality. Okay, can we move on? So, big questions on the role of university education, according to David Willets in his book called University Education. It is more to speak of a university as a place for education than merely instruction. Education is a higher word. It implies an action upon our mental nature and the formation of a character. The minute you understand, the minute you have that moral obligation, the minute you know that you have this civic conscience, that defines your character. Yeah. Now, these are all important key elements of leadership. So I will relate that to this key ingredient to leadership later on. Okay. Next. And then there is another book written by James Campbell. He's an Australian, quite a good friend of mine. We met a couple of times at Human University. He interacted a lot with USM. The shaping of a university has always been based on the philosophy of education that is drawn from understanding of the important role of social obligation guided by virtues. In other words, a person who is university educated has got the role of playing his part based on his social obligation and guided by virtues. There are rules, there are orders, there are adab that it need to be defining that rule. Okay, next. And again, I'm quite fascinated, as you can see, I'm quite fascinated by this book, Paul Ashwin. Okay, it talks about transforming education, manifesto, to help students to gain an understanding of knowledge that can change their sense of who they are, what the world is, and what they can do in the world to make things better. Okay, so the universities are established to look after knowledge for society. In other words, what you are actually putting there, training, is actually pass the students the knowledge, give them a good education, because at the end of the day, that student can then perform in the society. So that is the ultimate goal of our universities' education. Yeah. I put a chapter in this book, Higher Education in Malaysia, and we emphasizes on the role of universities. How do we conduct this? Okay, the nature of the university is universities seek knowledge, new knowledge. That's why we do research. That's why we always tell the lecturers, do research, because we want to find the new knowledge. And what do we do with this knowledge? We conserve the knowledge. That's why we teach and we write. Because if we don't teach and we don't publish, the knowledge will be gone, right? Today's knowledge that we discover through our research, if we don't publish it, If we don't teach it, then the next generation wouldn't know, and it's not documented. That's why the idea of conserving is translated into effective teaching and effective publication. And then we use that knowledge to educate and develop intellect. So when we teach, we always try to relate why the knowledge is important. How can this knowledge serve the society? So that's developing the students' intellect. What are the moral obligations? What are the angles that you should be looking at to put this knowledge, to put meaning into this knowledge? Yeah. So that's the engagement in the teaching. And when I say teaching, not only the classroom teaching, we also involve the activities, the co-curriculum. Those are also part of the teaching. A great example I would quote again, Sulam, is about having students who have got innovative ideas going into a community and trying to put his innovation into the community. He has to relate to the people who doesn't know anything about his content. He has to relate with his friends who have got different capabilities and get it together to make things happen. Okay, and then that is the part C where we want it to happen: empower the society with the knowledge they found. So we educate, creating a society that is balanced and able to promote sustenance of living. So that is the nature of university: seek knowledge, conserve and educate the individuals, empower the society with the intellects, the intelligent students that you produce from the university, so that they can make the ummah serta ummah yang sejahtera. Okay, so universities are agents that can transform politics, social culture, structure, as well as economy of a nation to a better future. That's what we want to in the form of economic strength of the country. It becomes more better. It becomes stronger. Political, we want to have a good political system for the country, and that's the purpose of university education. And we also want a civic conscious society, the one who cares about each other, the one who looks after each other. So that is the duty of a highly educated individual, and that is the kind of outcome we want from higher education. That is what we meant by higher education. Okay. Indeed, the ultimate goal of most universities is to be able to play a role in building societies and nation through knowledge and intellect. Okay. So next, please. When we want to measure the quality of our education, there are certain principles that we must put in place. First, we must reflect the purpose of the education. Whether this higher education that we intend to happen and whether this higher education's purpose that we want to occur is achievable or not. Did we achieve or not that purpose, okay? And then we have to examine the level of the particular degree rather than the whole institution. We might want to see each degree program rather than taking the whole holistic, because if you take the whole thing as a holistically, it becomes very complicated. So you look at each of the program. Do you have the element of knowledge transmission? Do you have the element of education transmission? And do you have the element of assessing whether it is a quality one, a quality exercise or not? Okay. Measure the quality of teaching offered rather than just looking at reputation or prestige. You know, so actually go into the depth of the quality of the teaching. Teaching excellence framework as developed by THS is one way to look at the quality of teaching. Draw a variety of measures that tells us about the quality from different perspectives. Okay, you may produce someone who is very good at his knowledge, but can he put his knowledge in context? Can he perform in the society? Can he communicate, as mentioned by Prof. Sazali just now? Okay, can he express himself? You know, does he have a moral virtues that guide him in the application of the knowledge? So those are the other angles, other perspectives that you have to look at. As a whole, are based on coherent, research-informed vision of the education process. It must be research-informed. The measurement must be based on some research. It must be coherent. Identify weaknesses that require improvement, okay, in the education practices, and provide a relatively simple comparison that's able to reflect the actual quality of education. So those are some of the principles that both students and lecturers can be mindful of whenever you want to see whether am I being highly educated, am I really undergoing through a higher education program here. Okay. Okay, so next we did that. Actually, we reflected this in our document called Education 5.0. Okay, we thought that okay, we must go beyond knowledge. So we say we must produce students who are resilient. Resilient means students who are willing to take challenges. I don't give up very easily. That's attitude. That's the attitude that you educate into the student. And then I must be agile. In other words, today I'm working with this department with this knowledge. The next day I'm working a different department, requires different knowledge, but I must be able to learn, relearn, and unlearn, and put my learning into context. Curious mind, I must have the ability to always challenge the norm. This is how we do it. Can we do it better? Can we do it better? That curious mind must be inculcated. Innovative, always thinking about providing new solution. Navigate complexity is about ability to simplify things rather than trying to make it more complex and making it more difficult for people to understand. Communication is about the ability to express your thoughts and defend that thoughts. Not only just about you being able to convey your messages, but more importantly, can you express what you're thinking and can you defend it? Integrity and ethics is not about just practicing integrity and ethics, but also the courage to uphold these values. If you see your friend is doing it wrong, they say, hello, you don't have to embarrass him, you don't have to make him feel guilty, but you have the courage to tell him, listen, you might want to rethink because this might not be the right way of doing things. I always say this, if you see your friends copying in an examination, you might just want to tell him, listen, if you copy in your examination, the professors, the lecturers will give you a grade that indicate how well you copy. It doesn't indicate how good the knowledge you get from your learning. So, rugi you juga, okay? So don't deceive yourself, right? So these are the kind of things that you want to talk about. Rationalizing, the ability to make the right judgment guided by the right reason. We are constantly faced with a lot of challenges and we have to make decisions. And in most of the cases, we want to make the best decision and you have to be able to rationalize. And then initiative and entrepreneurship. For every task that we give you, have the contention that this is my task. This is not his task, the university's task. It's my task. Own the task and find ways to make it happen. Right? Okay, next. So what should we concerned about? We must train our students, and students must also take this thinking that I must have the strength of imagination. I must dream. I must see the future. I must try to conceptualize things. I must be able to think. I must be able to coordinate and to curate, make things happen. And then I must always put myself grounded to the values, principle, and the clarity of purpose. So both lecturers and students, be very aware of this thing whenever you take up challenges and putting knowledge into education, into application. Next. Okay, so what it means is that we are not only producing graduates. We want to produce individuals who graduated from the university with the attitude of learning all the time. You are a lifelong learners. It's just that at this juncture, we give you a degree. Okay, but when you graduated, we want to say that you are actually embarking on a lifelong learning program. Okay, it is about facing the world of works, not just workers. You are not just an employee here, but you are going into an organization and you see the challenges of the organization is facing, and you're working with the organization, you are going to put value into the organization. You're going to suggest what can make things better for the organization. So you are actually facing the world of work. You are not merely an employee. You're not just a worker. Okay? It is about unleashing your potential, not just access to education. When you come into the university, you must remember that you have a potential. And the university's education is about nurturing, identifying this potential and nurturing it. And the minute you graduate, you could unleash that potential. Okay? So every individual that gets into university, they all have potential. So when they get into the university, they should be able to identify, what am I good at? What am I strong at? That's through the process, the education ecosystem the university is providing. And the minute you get to identify your potential, you have to nurture that potential, make it better, learn how to make it better, so that when you graduate, you can unleash that potential. Yeah. So this is what we talk about going to. So it's not merely access to get a job. There's a very limited scope of defining what is the purpose of education. It's about unleashing your potential. Okay. Now it's about the challenging the status quo, not just confirming, because confirm what we do today may seem obsolete 10 years later. And if you don't challenge your status quo, so your practices can be outdated in a very quickly. So in a higher order thinking, students, educated graduates are required to observe, look at the status quo and challenge it, not just confirming it all the time. It's about nurturing curious mind, not just recipients of knowledge. Every time you get something from your professors, your lecturers, think about it, think curiously, not just, oh, this is what being said, therefore I need to reproduce it back in my examination. But you're going to have to think, why is it being said? How can I use this to make it feasible for the community? And what are the things that I should be asking about this knowledge that has been passed to me? So that is developing. It is about understanding and embracing high moral values and belief in its role in ensuring societal progress and sustainability. This is a very simple example that I showed you just now. If you are fantastic in programming, if you're fantastic in computer, please use it for the sake of the ummah, not to destroy the ummah by becoming, something that is unfavorable. So this is where the high moral values and the belief is important. Okay, next. All right, so really, when we talk about higher education, these are some of the things that I can list down. You can put beyond this, okay? But these are the things that apparently that appears in my mind. We want to produce an education that makes students a responsible citizen. Yeah, we want to produce an education that enables and empowers students to lead responsibilities. We want an education that makes students understand the complexity of the world. The world is never a straight thing. It's very complex, okay? But you need to be able to understand and act on your understanding with your rationalization, with your knowledge, with an educated mind and supported by intellectual thinking, okay? We want an education that enables students to navigate complexities and make meaningful decisions. We want an education that prepares students to face the challenges and pressure of change. Change is never easy. Prof. Sazali mentioned about pandemic. You have to do a lot of change now, okay? You have to adjust, okay? And how can this high order thinking that you have developed in you allows to navigate this change, prepare you to face the challenges and the pressure of this change. As we can see now, sadly, we could see some people who just gave up and start throwing themselves from a 20-story building, and those things are happening. And these are things that we hope wouldn't happen to people who are developed in terms of education. An education system that makes students understand, appreciate, and preserve the earth for the future generation. Okay, if you had a chance to look at what's been directed by Tan Sri Jamila recently as to why human beings and animals are becoming closer and closer to a point the virus could be transmitted, is because a lot of destruction of forests has happened, and therefore the animals don't have a place to live, and then the human being and animals become closer and closer to a point that not only are we transmitting food, but we're also transmitting some virus from animals to humans. So that's what been mentioned. So and finally, an education that upholds the last point. We haven't finished the last point. An education that upholds ethics and values, appreciate collaboration, promotes mutual respect, negotiation, and act as a community. In other words, the education must all the time be supported by ethics and values. Okay? Next. So there is a framework that we think we should look into: a deep emphasis on values, principles, and purpose, develop thinking, intellectuality, and wisdom. This will be the framework that we should work on. Encourage the discovery of learners' talent and unleash it. Encourage learners to explore potential within them. Understand, because we are not, we are not a person who can know everything. But if I know something good, something, and Prof. Saifullah knows something, Prof. Sazali knows something, if we were to combine, then we can perhaps go beyond what we as an individual can do. Okay. Trans and multidisciplinary becomes very important. That's very true. You can, as I mentioned just now, you have to understand the social context, you have to understand the civic consciousness and everything so that make things happen. You know, one classic example, trans and multidisciplinary, we look at mechatronics, a subject that combines mechanical and electronic engineering. And if we don't combine these two things together, we can never get mechatronics, okay? Experiential and reflection, coordination and contextualizing knowledge, nurturing curiosity, and curating and curation. So we hope every curriculum that we design will fall or will take this framework into consideration when we come to it. Okay? So really, I am very attracted by this cartoon. It says here, first day of work, okay, your first job is to sweep the floor. And the reply goes, but I am a graduate. And the majikan then says, oh, sorry, I didn't realize. Give me the broom and I'll show you how. Okay. So what I interpret from this, the depiction of this cartoon is like this. So what sort of outcome would you desire from your graduates? Of your making, of my making, upon graduation from your university. Okay, next, just click the button. Okay. Are you producing someone who became arrogant because he has a piece of paper from the university which he used to tell people that he has a brain because he gets a scroll, right? He has a degree, right? I go out there and say, hey, listen, I have a degree, you know. So are you producing such an individual, or are you producing someone who are humbled by the knowledge and intellectuality they nurture or you nurture in themselves, so that they will do things out of responsibility, accountability, and moral obligation? Cleaning the floor, irregardless whether you are a degree holder, a PhD holder, or what, you need to clean. The room has to be clean. And if no one else clean it, will you be willing to clean it up out of your moral responsibility? Yeah. But if you thought that, oh, I have a degree, I have a PhD, this is not my job, that means that you actually do not adhere to the idea of intellectuality, because intellectuality means a person who will act based on responsibility, who rationalize things, he assumes accountability, and all these are driven by moral obligation. Yeah. So this cartoon really reflects to me the kind of quality of individuals that we want or we desire to produce from a program called higher education. Okay. So next, higher education lead. Okay. So just now we talked about higher education. What do we expect? I mean, there's a lot more things actually you can talk about coming out from higher education. But I was saying that you have to understand the context of higher education because higher education is badly needed if you are a leader. You have to be in a higher order thinking. If you want to become a leader, you have to instill that higher order thinking in that person through higher education. But let's talk a little bit about higher education leadership, especially in the university. Okay, so the leadership in higher education is about serving the purpose of seeking knowledge and educate. It's about producing intellectuals. It's about shaping a knowledgeable and educated society, so that educated individuals, so that they can become a member of the society, right? Who are advanced in thinking, who are infused with strong moral values and ethics. Okay, maybe we can look at some of the next slide, please. We can look at some of the promises some of the universities made. Okay, this is a paragraph that I took from the book written by the late Professor Khoo Kay Kim in a book called 100 Years of University Malaya. And this is what he said about the day when University Malaya was established. The University of Malaya is being founded at the same time as foundations are being laid for a nation of Malaya. That is a most happy coincidence, for a university can play a notable part in making a nation. It's talking about university playing a role in making a nation. I do not suggest that its main conscious purpose should be political. Its purpose must be higher education. It must seek to lead faithfully its students up the mountain slopes of learning, so that as they climb, they see with ever clearer eyes and grand views of knowledge and wisdom, truth and beauty. but that progress will bring many reactions, not only in the educational, but also in social and political field. In other words, the ability of the student to go through University Malaya education and have a clearer grand use of knowledge and combine knowledge with wisdom, discover the truth and create a beauty out of it, that will basically make a nation. So this is what is being said by the Chancellor of the university at that time, Malcolm McDonald. Okay, this is in 1949. Okay, now here in our very university, we stated our promises in our mission, through our mission and vision. We said that if you go through UiTM, the reason what UiTM is gunning for is that we want to enhance knowledge and expertise of Bumiputra. That's number one. Okay, in all fields of study through professional programs, research work, and community service based on moral values and professional ethics. So we want knowledgeable and experts among the Bumiputras who are guided by moral values and professional ethics. That's one thing. Our vision is to establish UiTM as a premier university, okay, an outstanding scholarship and academic excellence, capable of providing leadership to Bumiputra's dynamic involvement in all professional fields of world-class standard, and to produce globally competitive graduates of sound ethical standing. Again, we emphasize a very sound ethical standing. And our philosophy, every individual has the ability to attain excellence, okay, through the transfer of knowledge and assimilation of moral values so as to become professional graduates, capable of developing knowledge, self, society. We don't discriminate students. We say every individual who gets into the university, they are all capable individuals. Sebab tu kita ada kelaikan minima masuk universiti. Okay, the minute kita dah terima satisfaction, this guy has capability. He can be an excellent student. All we need to do now is to expose him to the right education system. Okay, so next I just step the button. This must not only be my vision or Prof. Saifullah or Prof. Sazali's vision, mission, but it must be our vision, especially lecturers, okay, and students. This must be our vision and this must be our mission. Okay, next. So when you adopt that as your mission, what do you do? Especially lecturers. On yourself, you will try to do as much as possible to make it happen. Especially you will dig deep to find approaches to make students, communities understand and empower, because that's what the mission has said, right? On the system, you don't wait to be directed. You don't need your Prof. to direct you. Do this. No. It is out of your own feeling. It is out of your own responsibility that you want to make happen. You don't wait to be directed. Your intention, because you believe in the mission, you believe in the vision, your intention will lead any purposeful action that you're making. What would be the energy that drives you there? Is your urge to see this thing materialize, because you know that it will make a better future for the country. Okay, in your situation, you will always encounter challenges or resistance. That's normal. Okay, tak ada itulah, tak ada inilah, tak cukup itu, tak cukup duit, tak ada macam-macam challenge. But since you believe in the mission, since you believe in the vision, you will always find ways to make it happen. Now, if you adopt that attitude, click the button, please. When you assume this, or not yet, when you assume this, when you adopt the attitude, you are indeed a leader. Okay? A leader doesn't mean that he has a stand at the position. Tidak. You are actually leading something. What are you leading? You are leading the mission of the university in your own way. You are leading the students' progression in your own way. The students are assuming this. I am a JPP. I am perwakilan pelajar. I want this to happen. So I find ways to make things happen. The minute you start embarking on that, you are already assuming the role of leader. So don't get me wrong that leaders are not position held, but it is more of what you want to assume your responsibility on. What is it that you want to achieve? And when you start acting on it, you are leading. Okay. Now, next, please. So, in a university, you have two levels of leadership. One is the academic leadership. The academic leadership are always positioned in the faculties or centers of excellence. What they do, they will put up a scholarly thought they will treasure into scholarly thought and inquiry in the form of research and learning program. Okay, so they are actually knowledge and intellectual processing. And usually we have ways to measure the strength of the academic. Of course, you can see H index, citation, impact factor, rating, ranking. These are quick indicators that we can tell whether an academic leadership is performing or not in the university. But don't forget that the institutional leadership, which is actually a leadership that will have to deliver the promises that we make. Okay, next, click the button, please. This will talk about the institutional performance, the impact the institution make based on the vision and mission that the university promised. For example, our university says we want to have knowledge and experts. We want to have knowledgeable and experts among the Bumiputras. Is that happening? We want Bumiputras who are moral, values, and professionally ethical. Is that happening? UiTM should become a premier university. Is that happening? Outstanding scholarship and academic excellence. UiTM should have that. So maybe that one we can extract from the academic indicators measurement. Okay, providing leadership to Bumiputras' dynamic involvement in all professional fields. Is that happening or not? Produce globally competitive graduates of sound ethical standing. Is that happening or not? So while we are measuring the academic strength of the university, don't forget that through our vision and mission, we make promises. And that promises legitimizes our existence in the society. So we have to also check whether those promises are delivered. And if that is being delivered, that will translate the university into a credible institution. Okay? Okay, next. So I have identified, the translation of the academic leadership into the impact and credibility that we want to have. Yeah. So next. So I have listed when I sit down, I said, okay, the challenges of UiTM being a fantastic university is about UiTM having its credibility, building its credibility. So I did sit down and try to think what would it take for UiTM to become a credible university. I got 13. There could be more, but this is the 13 that I could think of. And in fact, some of these have been consulted with some of my friends in the other universities. I said leading knowledge to empowering community is very important for UiTM. In other words, UiTM must be able to be seen that every time a student comes in, the knowledge that we have in the university are able to empower the student, and we are able to empower the community. We spearhead knowledge that could develop the community. Okay, mungkin nelayan instead of keluar ke laut daripada pukul 6 pagi sampai pukul 6 petang dapat katalah 10 kilo ikan. Saya tak berapa familiar dengan berapa kilo biasa satu hari. Tetapi apabila kita ada GPS ke, kita ada ability to zoom kat mana the school of fish is, teknologi daripada universiti, nelayan tak payah pergi daripada pukul 6 pagi sampai pukul 6 petang. Dia tahu pukul berapa nak pergi. Tahu pukul ini paling banyak, pukul sekian-sekian paling banyak ikan dekat sini tepat. Pergi zoom situ dia, tengok dia dapat 10 kilo dalam masa 3 jam ke 4 jam. So that is a kind of knowledge we hope we could use to empower the community. Okay? Education for all. We want to produce an inclusive, equitable opportunities for Bumiputra students on high quality education. Sebab itulah kita UiTM, kita start daripada pra-diploma sampai kepada PhD. Sebab kita tak pernah kata pelajar-pelajar yang masuk pra-diploma tak pandai. Kita kata pelajar-pelajar yang masuk pra-diploma ini mungkin tak dapat opportunity bagi mereka yang berada di tempat lain. Saya dengan Prof. Safailah, kami pernah serve dekat Jepun. Dululah. Sekarang dah jauh lebih baik lah. Kita dapati bahawa ketika itu pelajar-pelajar daripada sekolah, balik dari sekolah, dia akan pergi balik ke rumah, dia akan sibuk membantu mak dan ayah dia untuk meletakkan food on the table. Maknanya tolong ayah kutip ke apa semua lah. Okay? Berbanding dengan pelajar di bandar, ketika itu balik daripada sekolah, pergi ke tuition. Lepas tu dua-dua masuk SPM. Okay? Kita tahu dah siapa yang boleh dapat tinggi, siapa yang kita dah agak lah. But we never say the student is not clever. We say the student's opportunity may not be the same at that time. Sebab tu UiTM adopt the fact that okay, we provide the pra-diploma so that we can improve, provide cover balik opportunity yang tak ada pada pelajar tersebut semasa dia dulu SPM. That's why we said our education system is for all, it's inclusive. Now UiTM's education, we must be able to make it strong through our diversity. through multidisciplinary and cross-disciplinary. Fostering collaboration for excellence. We have to foster collaboration. We have to nurture talent that is learning experience for continued excellence. When it comes to internationalization, we must make progressive international prominence. When it comes to governance, it must be empowered and transparent. When it comes to education, we must make sure that UiTM's education leads economic revitalization. UiTM education for inclusive and sustainable development. Research and innovation must be channeled for inclusive growth. Addressing state versus market determined education, UiTM education, okay? Kita ada private universities and we have nation building agenda which is state driven. Addressing quality versus quantity, kita besar, kita mesti tengok quality. And finally, we must embark on a sustainable financial model. Okay, so this is just to share to you lah, but I think elements that we must look into when we want to say we want to have a credible university. Okay, next please. Okay, so I have talked about the meaning of higher education. I've talked about how do we lead our higher education. I'm sure there are more areas that can be discovered, can be talked about. But in this limited scope of time, I could only touch most few. So now let's talk about leadership. Because I said just now, higher education is important to become a leader. And then the way we manage or lead higher education is also important to shape a leader. And let's talk about leadership. Okay, next slide please. So what is a state of no leadership? These are a few pictures that I could Google up. State of no leadership, people go everywhere. Ada yang mungkin fall off the cliff, no direction. Ada yang tak tahu mana nak pergi. Okay, in other words, click the button please. Okay, people, you can get confused, you can get unsure, unclear, perplexed, disoriented and bewildered if there is no leadership. Okay, next. But what happens if there is no leadership and we become a follower? Okay, Einstein did say, the one who follows the crowd will usually get no further than the crowd. The one who walks alone is likely to find himself in places no one has ever been. In other words, you start leading. Otherwise, you'll just be a mere follower. Ikut, ya, orang buat, kita buat, ya. But actually, we are going nowhere. We can never be better than the crowd. Okay. Okay, let's look into some spiritual context pula, because I strongly believe leadership ni, next please, ada spiritual context ini. Okay, sebab kita bercakap tentang tanggungjawab, amanah, okay, yang mesti kita gerakkan dengan adab. Okay, so now I happen to go through some of this ayat dalam surah Al-Baqarah. And I'm not the only one who look at this in this dimension. Okay, Syed Abdul Ala Maududi look into this dimension as well. Professor Jeffrey Lang pun tengok juga dalam dimension macam ni. In fact, I followed a lot of their argument, and Professor Hamzah Yusuf also look into this area. So this is what the ayat said. Just think, ayat 30 surah Al-Baqarah. Okay, talks about the duty of a man. Just think when your Lord says to the angel, "Lo, I am about to place a vicegerent on earth." Okay, Allah kata akan aku letakkan khalifah di bumi, manusia ni. Okay, so the angel when I say, "Will you place on it one who has spread mischief and shed blood, while we, the angel, celebrate your glory and extol your holiness?" Allah replied, "Surely I know what you do not know." Okay, the point I'm trying to make from this slide is that man was created to become, click please, a vicegerent or khalifah, pemimpin. Right? So understand, every man has got that duty. Okay, next. Ayat 31 says, "Then Allah taught Adam the names of all things and presented them to the angel and said, if you are right that the appointment of a vicegerent will cause mischief, then tell me the names of things." Okay, next please. They said, "Glory to you, we have no knowledge except what you taught us." Okay, kalau malaikat ni dia tahu apa yang Allah dah instruct dia buat lah. Kalau dia malaikat maut, kerja dia cabut nyawa dia. Okay, So malaikat ni very specific. But human ni banyak benda Allah boleh ajar. Okay? And Allah boleh didik manusia. So you only know and you all are knowing all. So in other words, what this ayat says that human being asked to become Khalifah, human has the ability to acquire knowledge. They have the ability to learn. Okay? Sebab itulah kita sediakan pendidikan yang pendidikan tinggi. Because we know human can learn. Okay, next. Okay, and then Allah said to Adam, tell the names of these things, okay, to the angel. And when he had told them the names of all things, Allah said, did I not say to you that I know everything about the heaven and the earth, which are beyond your range of knowledge, and I know all that you disclose and all that you hide. Okay, so in other words, a human being is a learning being. They can learn, they can acquire knowledge, because when Allah asked Adam to tell, they can communicate through language, and naming the things require a lot of thinking, a lot of way to tell, so that requires intellectuality. So the human being is actually a learning being, okay? It can acquire knowledge, human can communicate, it has a language, and then it can develop intellectuality. Okay, next. Ayat 35 says, O Adam, okay, this is another part of the story in the Surah Al-Baqarah. O Adam, live in the garden, you and your wife, and eat abundantly of whatever you wish, but do not approach this tree. I think most of you remember this, right? Jangan datang dekat pada pokok ni. Jangan makan buah ni. Or else you'll be counted among the wrongdoers. So there are such things as wrongdoers. So human being is actually a moral being. You have to do the right thing. You can also do the wrong thing based on your decision. Okay? But Satan caused both of them to deflect from obeying our command by tempting them to the tree and brought them out of the state they were in. And Allah command, get down all of you. Henceforth, each of you is an enemy to one another, between human and Satan. On earth, you shall have your abode and your livelihood for an appointed time. So, click please. What this ayat tells us is that the human being can make choices, can make decisions. But more importantly, they have to make choices and decisions which is right. They could choose to do the wrong thing. So, a human being is a moral being capable of making choices and therefore decision. This is important as a vicegerent, sebagai pemimpin penting ni. Okay? Sebab kita perlu ada keupayaan untuk belajar, kita perlu ada keupayaan untuk mendapat ilmu, kita perlu ada keupayaan untuk berkomunikasi, kita ada keupayaan untuk menggunakan bahasa dan intellectuality. Sebab perkara ini penting, kerana perkara inilah yang akan menentukan sama ada kita buat benda betul ataupun benda salah. And kita kena buat benda betul. Sebab itulah ada moral being. Sebab itu we are the moral being. Okay? So, next please. If I can sum it up, okay, a man, what is a man then? Man is actually a learning being, able to learn knowledge, language, and develop intellectuality. Okay? Man is also a moral being, capable of making the right choices and thus decision, guided by the right values in order to do the right things. Sebab itulah Allah turunkan Al-Quran. Sebab itulah panduan-panduan untuk Allah tak ada campak Adam dekat muka bumi just like that. Tetapi Allah turunkan panduan. What is the right thing to do? What is the wrong thing to do? Sekarang kita umat kita sekarang ni ada Al-Quran. Okay? So, we have the buku panduan. And man is a vicegerent or a khalifah or God on earth. And what is a vicegerent? One who exercises delegated powers on behalf of the supreme authority, that is Allah. Man is thus not a master. He is only his deputy and does not possess any powers of his own except those which are delegated to him by the real masters. You have to do things according to the rules of God. That is the meaning of this sentence. You cannot just act on as you wish, you know. And that's why I said tadi, jatuhkan bom atom, nuclear bomb. I think that is a problem because bila you drop an atomic bomb, not only you kill the people whom you think are wrong, you also kill the innocent, including babies and everything else. Is that a morally right thing to do? So So those are the things. Okay. As such, man is entrusted. As such, man is entrusted in the form of amanah with the responsibility to rule according to God's will and purpose and His pleasure, not according to your will, according to God's will. Okay, this is what is being written by. Okay, next. So, before we get into leadership, let's understand our duty. Okay, our duty as a man, we have to be knowledgeable, we have to be intellectual, we have to have the ability and responsibility of learning and develop our intellect and reason. We have to be a moral being in accordance to the command and guidance as guided by Allah. Okay, only with knowledge and intellectual capability can a man perform his right moral obligation, serving Allah's command or ibadah. And we have to perform the duty of a vicegerent, guided by knowledge, intelligence, values, and obligation. The point I'm trying to make here, if you want to become a leader, which you are indeed assigned to be a leader, each of us, we must be knowledgeable, we must develop our intellectuality, we must develop our moral obligation, our civic conscience, only then we can become a vicegerent. So that's one thing about the principles of leadership that I personally am adhering to. Okay, so, next. So, man has a purpose of performing the duty of a vicegerent on earth in accordance to the laws and values as defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this leadership is never about title nor position. This leadership is not about power, it's not about stature, or not even about reward. This leadership is about the duty to be carried out with responsibility, amanah, and accountability. It is about fulfilling the command of God, that is to perfect all human society and to perfect the physical world of space and time. Just like if we lead SDG, we are fulfilling the requirement of perfecting the world and the society. It is about a duty guided by knowledge, intellectuality, and moral obligation. It is driven by your core beliefs, shaped by knowledge, shaped by values, and your intellect. It is driven by your clarity of purpose. It is guided by your call, which is the right, clean heart. Okay, this is the requirement of a leader. All right. So whenever you want to assume the position of leadership, please remember this: that it is not about title, it is not about position, it's never about power, it's never about stature or reward, but it's about your responsibility. Okay. From there, the recognition, people recognize you. Whatever title they give you, fine. It's not that you cannot assume those titles. You will assume that title, but people know you more for the amanah that is being given to you. And your amanah is guided by your knowledge, intellectuality, and your moral obligation, and it conforms to the rule that has been laid out by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, all gone. Right? Next. So, I was once at ACAP, and we emphasize on this, that being a leader, the ultimate thing, the most one thing that you must always try to strive for is justice. Okay, so when you lead, you want to deliver justice. Okay, and you can have this justice delivered if you adhere to these three things as defined by Tansi Zorazak. Okay. First, you have to have wisdom. With wisdom, you have discretion, you practice excellence, understand of subtle implication of any action that you make, able to see the hidden and defects of the soul. Without, you can be cunning, you can be swindling, you can be very deceptive, you can practice slyness. You must also have courage, because with courage, you practice nobility, you have endurance, you have dignity, and you suppress your anger. Without courage, you can be reckless. You'll be very concerned about pride. You can be arrogant. You can be very egoistic, conceit, and quickness of anger. Okay, and you must have temperance, because with temperance you have generosity, you have modesty, patience, and tolerance. Without, you can be greed for money. You can be pretentious sometimes, and immorality. And I'm not saying that. I mean, these are things that could affect just anybody, including me, for them. But if you are consciously looking for it and you are consciously thinking about it, you might want to avoid all this negative thing. You want to act on the positive thing. So if you put these three wisdom, courage, and temperance, inshallah, you'll be able to provide the justice that is required in leadership. Okay, next. So, for those who aspire to be a leader, okay, I think it's so important for us to look and understand our purpose. Spend some time. You have to just reflect on yourself. You don't have to open up to anybody to ask for answers, but reflect on yourself. I'm encouraging everybody just to look at yourself. Okay. Now, why is it so important for us to understand our purpose? Because it helps us to understand who we are, our duties, and our responsibility. Having a purpose guides us into the decision and allows consistency in all our actions for the right thing. That's the very essence of true leadership. Clarity of purpose forms a basis of self-awareness, which is the foundation of leadership, knowing who you are. Understanding your purpose will always energize you. If you say, I want to do this because I want to gain reward, okay? Suddenly when the reward is not there, you don't want to do it, okay? You lost your energy. But if you look at a person like Mandela, okay, Nelson Mandela, he was in prison when he wanted to strive for South African freedom from apartheid. There's nothing that rewarded him, but his clarity of purpose, his desire to see a better South Africa, that forms the energy in him. Just like academicians, keep on doing research because they want to seek for the truth. It's not about the reward, okay? And when they consented on the fact that I want to go for this, the truth, to discover things, that what energizes you. Wake you up very early in the morning to start looking into this thing, you know, and even working until late night, you are not tired about it, okay? Believing in our purpose helps us to preserve. It builds courage in us and willing to take challenges. Serving our purpose allows us to be focused, okay? We know what our purpose are, so we are not distracted by other things, and we have a better chance of making significant difference, okay? Next, please. So, to serve our purpose, we must be guided by our core values and belief, okay? So some of the core values and we believe that we must adhere to: be a learned person, okay? Associated ourselves with being cultured, scholarly, and intellectual. Practice high manners and courtesy. Ikut resam padi lah, okay? Sebab kadang-kadang kalau kita dah sombong sangat, orang tak nak bergaul dengan kita, kita susah dapat ilmu daripada orang, okay? So, ikut resam padi. Makin berisi, makin tunduk. I always say that human beings are never perfect. We have a lot of blind spots. We've got blind spots. The only way for us to realize our blind spot is by us interacting with our friends and our friends telling us, hey, hello, you're not seeing it from this angle, you're not seeing it from there. And that blind spot is inevitable because the way you were brought up, the way you shape your thinking, you tend to ignore other areas. But if you are willing to open up and say, hey, I'm learning all the time, so then you could minimize your blind spots. And minimizing blind spot is so important in making the right decision. Okay? Humility and modesty promotes courtesy. Be polite and respectful. Your inner belief about what is right or what is wrong makes the foundation of your personal values. Your action, decision, and reactions reveal your values. Values define what is important to you, and adopted values must be guided by knowledge, intellect, and moral responsibility. So be careful with all this, especially phrases like loyalty. Blind loyalty can be very dangerous. Okay? Right, next. Okay, so now in the next few slides, I just want to talk about ourselves. I mean, you reflect it on your own. I'm not asking you to reveal everything, but you just reflect on your own. Now, which of these, because these are important in understanding who you are and what you believe, which of these would best describe you? Are you a type of person who would like to be recognized all the time? You seek reputation, to stand out from the rest, to be likable and popular, to be respected, to earn a status, or to earn rewards and recognition? Or, next, are you the type who are ready to challenge the accepted norm? This can be very uncomfortable because people may always oppose you. Are you the type who are ready to keep looking for answers from others in order to do the right things? Are you the type who who inclined to say, this is my vision rather than this is our vision? Okay? Are you the type who are willing to say stay the course despite stiff opposition? Are you the type who are emotionally energized to drive your purpose? This is for us to answer ourselves. You know, we don't have to. This is just for us to answer ourselves. So, which one? Which category do you belong? Which emphasis do you belong? Do you put yourself into? It's important in understanding your values and your core belief. Next, okay. which of these bothers you? Okay, when you are being outperformed by your colleagues and competitors, do you get bothered by that? When you see your perspective is being ignored, you get bothered by that. When you feel you are not popular, when you feel you need authority to execute things, that you are not being acknowledged for your position, that other people earn rewards and recognition more than you. Does this bother you, or you are constantly worried about your organization's credibility, that you would rather do the right thing rather than the popular thing, that you are concerned about your organization missing its purpose, that you are unable to build a better future for your organization, that you are able to move people and things if you have compelling reason. Which one bothers you more? The right hand category or the left hand category? Okay, that is very critical in understanding yourself when you assume leadership role. Next, okay, again, understanding yourself. What results do you want to bring in your life? Do you visualize a future that is better than today? Is that important to you? Or do you visualize better things for you today compared to from tomorrow? Okay. Do you make an attempt to understand the issues of today that prevent things from becoming better? Do you try to understand why are we not becoming better and better? Do you see the opportunities of how things could be better? Okay. Next. Okay. How do you want people to experience your presence? Do you want people to get inspired by you? What sort of statement would you want people to make on you? Do you want people to say that you are honest, humble, hardworking, sincere, realistic? Definitely don't want people to say that you are slyly, you're cunning, and you're deceiving. Okay? And do people get energized by you? When they look at you, do they get motivated? Okay? Next. Okay? I stated 3 important values to move followers. Okay? First, you have to be truthful. Then you have to develop your intellect, because when you become a leader, people will see this in you. Yeah. Are you a truthful person? Are you an honest person? Okay. Do you have knowledge, and do you develop your purpose? Are you clear about where you want to go? And then, do you propagate to do good things? Have you got compelling reasons for doing it? Okay. Next. Okay. So I want to pose some simple questions to reflect on us. Let's reflect back on our core beliefs and values. And these are some of the suggested questions posed by from a book called Too Many Bosses and Too Few Leaders, which I think is good to share. Okay, it says sometimes we have this tendency of saying, I have a feeling that our staff are not committed, and I do not know why. Okay, now usually it's not that people are not committed. People are scared to make decisions for fear of upsetting their boss. When the boss becomes too bossy, people are afraid of making recommendations. But if the boss practice leadership, which means that I want to listen to you. I'm not important here. The organization is important. Okay, achieving the goal is important. It's not me. It's about us. So then people will tend to speak more. Okay, everyone waited for the boss to decide. Thus, decision will be late because people are afraid of the boss. People may be working, but no ownership of the task at hand. When the boss is too bossy, you seem people to be working, but the people are actually there is no ownership in their working. People may be satisfied with their job, but they are not engaged. Okay, so this is when the boss starts saying, I have a feeling our staff are not committed. It's not that they are not committed. It's just that they are afraid to see whether themselves, next please, whether they are being treated as a subordinate or a co-leader. You want to create co-leader. In a university, especially, we are collegial in nature. We want to create co-leaders. We don't want to assume subordination. Okay, next. Another questions. Sometimes we tend to say this, I supported you, but it is the top management who did not approve, and I can't do much about it. You know what? When you say that, while you think you can win your team's heart, in actual fact, you are losing credibility as a leader. Okay? Over time, your team will realize your real capacity. Over time, your team are unsure if you actually care about them. And you tend to lose the trust from your team members. This is basically what. So, are you looking for popularity or are you looking for responsibility? Next. Okay, reflecting again on your core values and belief. You tend to say, it was my idea. It was me who created this. Had it not been for my decision, it's my way or no way. I don't know whether you have heard this. Okay, but if you say this, people say that you are the type who are self-promoting and self-glorifying. Okay, people will look at you as a boss, not a leader, and you are very authoritative. People will only tell you things that you want to hear. You will fail to get a sincere input from people around you, which may be crucial. This is very important because when you lead, you want to get honest opinion from everybody. You have a tendency to ignore or in fact being challenged by those people who have the real capability to deliver, right? So these are things that you might just want to answer. So are you talking about your personal glory or are you talking about your purpose? Yeah. Next. Okay. Another very familiar phrases that people make. The boss wants it. I was instructed. My KPI is blah 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 blah. This is how I did it. We should follow. Okay. Now, if you assume leadership role and you keep on saying this kind of thing, eventually people will say you are directionless. Your followers or basically your subordinates or basically not subordinates, your co-leaders will say you are directionless. You lack originality, not taking responsibility for the outcome, and you are following, you are not leading. And eventually the team may lose trust on you. Okay? So in this, are you talking about your mission or are you talking about your survival? Next. Okay. This is another phrase that I think we should all avoid as a leader. The boss wants it. Next one. Okay. That's not our man. He's not with us. His view is not that of ours. Okay. Now, if you as a leader dwell on this, people will say you are not professional. You know, your decision will be based on what is it in for me rather than what is it in for us and our organization. You will lose inclusivity, there'll be injustice, and there'll be no credibility. So these are some of the phrases that I captured from this book. Okay, too many bosses and too few leaders. And so, are you talking about your team or are you talking about your group? So finally, when it comes to leadership, it's so important that you have knowledge. It's so important that you develop education and it's so important that you undergo education and guidance. It's so important that you develop intellect and akal, understand your moral duties, understand your clarity of purpose, and develop your guiding values, principle, and courage in order to become an effective leader. And all this context is what we want to assume in higher education. And that's what we believe about the term higher education, at least my context within me, that is my definition of higher education. Besides getting your knowledge on the subject matter to the highest level, degree, masters, and PhD, it must be added with all this, quote unquote, the soft skill that Prof. Sazali mentioned just now. Intellect, moral duties, educated, be guided, have a clarity of purpose, what are the guiding values, what are the principles, and have courage to uphold these values. Okay, with that, I thank you very much for your time. It's only 11 o'clock, my God, I take little time. And thanks for your attention. Back to you, Firdaus.
All right, Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, dear Professor Technologist Dr. Haji Muhammad Kamal bin Hj.Harun, for such insightful and knowledgeable sharing. We hope everyone will learn something useful from this speech and apply it so that all of us could become the better version of ourselves as a leader. So now I will open the floor for Q&A session. Feel free to take this opportunity to ask questions to our dear professor.
Okay, good morning, Professor Kamal. I have this one question. So that is like the real or everyday how to tackle actually the problem. If you are facing some problem or issue, so what is actually the process to resolve or to tackle in the view of leadership or in the view how to make the decision? What is the process? How to evaluate? How to and finally come to the decision will be made. Thank you, Prof.
No. Okay, thank you, Prof. Okay, whenever we have the problem, in my opinion, the only right thing to do is to come up with the right solution for the problem. Right? We can't afford to arrive to a wrong solution, a wrong decision, because that won't solve the problem. So, when there is a problem, the first thing is you have to have the ability to understand the problem. And the problem may be understood in many aspects of knowledge, many aspects of discipline, not just one discipline, you know. So you're going to have to gather people who are like-minded with you, who wants to, just like you, solve the problem. And by doing so, the chances of getting the problem assessed from that many angles, because no one, from my experience, education problem is never one angle, it's multi-angle, okay? So you will be able to allow yourself the opportunity to assess the problem from the various angles. And each of the person who projected the angle are people who have got the knowledge from that angle, okay? Like for example, I was faced with ODL, ensuring how to deliver. My first take off, senang aja, online, everybody online. Suddenly one problem came. Hello, somebody in Labuan couldn't get this, you know. Oh, there is a connectivity problem. And also, so once we start gathering, we start seeing the numerous angle of the problem. And you have to allow and empower each of the person who address the problem with that angle, the ability to offer their solution. And your ability to put the solution together in the most rational manner is your leadership capability. And okay, ini can be very idealistic. How can we make it more realistic? Okay, so that ability to put the problem together and come up with a holistic solution will be the reflection of your leadership capability. So first, you have to recognize that the problem has to be solved from many angles. Second, you have to acknowledge people who have knowledge of that angle of the problem. Thirdly, you must allow them to speak up, because if you don't allow them to speak up, so you cannot be too bossy. You have to allow them to speak up, because if they don't speak up, you miss the opportunity to understand and solve the problem. And third, collectively, okay, how best can we deliver this? You may not be able to solve the problem 110%, my friend, really, honestly, from my experience. But if you can solve it 70 to 80%, that's good enough, because you need, the minute you offer the solution, most of the time the solution doesn't work the first day. Okay, it may resolve 30, 40%, but then you know what problems next crop up, and then you start looking at that problem. Eventually make it better and better. That's why it's so important for you to be able to be continuously learning, learn, relearn, and unlearn, and adopt the attitude of, I don't know everything, I have to learn and take the attitude of continuously learning. Inshallah, if you have that desire, the energy, you will come eventually to the point that you can solve the problem. Okay, so I hope that answers Prof's last query.
Thank you, Prof. Ahmad.
Thank you.
Okay, Professor. So this is one question that I received from the YouTube comment section from Alia Najibah. So what are the essential soft skills that we students need to master before we step into the working life?
What? Say it again, please. What are
the essential soft skills that we students need to master before we step into the working life?
Okay. I mentioned just now about the expectation of the future employers, especially those of the 21st century, and this is not something that you can acquire just instantly. You have to develop. Okay, I did mention about resilient. You have to have that resilient skill. In other words, you don't give up easily. Okay, I did mention about you being agile and adaptable. It's good to experience all environment, all situations. Okay, I did mention that you must have a skill of curious mind. Always want to ask things, want to know things. Okay, and then be innovative. Try to solve things or look at it. Okay, I think we can make it better. Always have that desire to make it better. And communication is so important. Yeah, communication is not about just saying things. As I mentioned just now, communication is about making people understand what you want to say. So you're going to have to acquire language very well. Tak kisahlah bahasa Melayu ke, bahasa Inggeris ke, yang penting sekali, once you communicate, people really understand what you're expressing. And then if you have an idea and thought, your ability to defend your thought, that's also communication. Okay. And you have to be basically able to navigate complexity, difficult things. How can you adjust yourself in complex situation? That's why dalam university education kita banyak orang kata encourage pelajar-pelajar masuk dalam activity project co-curriculum, because when you enter this activity you will be encountering complexity, difficult times, challenges that is yang lecturer tak pernah ajar dalam kelas, you know. But then when you are being confronted by this difficult situation, with your ability to think, with your ability to negotiate and communicate with your friends, you will learn how to navigate that complexity. So if you ask me what are the soft skills, this would be especially the soft skill that is required, especially in confronting the 21st century challenges. And then entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship bukan pasal berniaga saja tau. Entrepreneurship is about having an entrepreneurial mindset, finding solution, taking risks, trying things out, you know, and then venturing more, trying to look for more knowledge, look deeper, read more. These are the entrepreneurial mindset skills that we think the student will have to develop. But like I said, don't be unfair to yourself. These are skills that you need to develop over time. You jangan kata, I cannot speak lah, after 1 year dalam university pun I cannot communicate, and you start becoming very, you pressure yourself. No, don't allow yourself. Interact more. Find ways how to improve these skills, you know. So that would be my advice to the student. Be fair to yourself, you know. Okay. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Professor. All right. So another question that I've received just now is that, okay, so basically as a student, university life is basically the peak of their leadership skills.
Yeah.
So, and then after that, they will gradually decrease by time. So the question is, what do students leaders have to do in order to sustain their leadership skills after they completed their studies and started working in the future?
Okay. I think I beg to differ a little bit when you say leadership starts to be reduced after university life. No, I think the leadership skill become even more important. At the very least, you're going to get married and start leading your family. and at the very least, you get appointed in a department. You have to start leading your department with people that you do not know, and with KPIs, with the expected outcomes. So I would say leadership after graduation is perhaps more challenging than leadership in the university. Leadership in the university, you will have the chance to quote unquote make mistakes and learn from your mistakes. You have your friends, your colleagues, your professors, your teachers who all care about you, who can say it's okay to make this mistake, because the most important thing that you should learn, you should assume from here is learning to make mistakes. Don't repeat the mistake, or don't even end up perfecting your mistakes, they say, you know. So you're going to have to really, and there is room for that in the university. However, when you go to the job market, when you are asked to helm a department, you are asked to be helm an organization, or even when you get married and to helm your family, you can make mistakes. So this leadership challenge becomes even real. It becomes so the training that you have to assume in the university is, I would say this: assume responsibility, own the responsibility. This is my responsibility, because the minute you start owning that responsibility, you will find means and ways, you will be energized to carry out that responsibility. And the journey that you have to go through when you carry out that responsibility will be your learning curve to improve wherever your shortcomings are. Be it in terms of the hard knowledge, or be it in terms of the soft knowledge, soft skills that you need to own. In terms of communication, you need to solve it. I own this. I want to solve this. I want to resolve this. Own it. So if you ask me one single approach, what would be best to allow you to learn the many aspects of leadership, is by owning the project and be guided by the right thing to do for the project. Not for your purpose, not for your gain, but it's for your organization, for your team, or for your university, you know. These are the one fundamental. And then it's okay to make mistakes, but the most important thing is to learn from that mistake. Do not repeat that mistake. And in fact, in a university, the tolerance of making mistake is far bigger than you are in the organization. In the organization, unfortunately, you cannot make too much mistake. Okay, and otherwise you ended up getting fired or you become a liability to the organization. So this is what university education is all about. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor. So is there any other questions from the audience?
Yes, Firdaus. Assalamualaikum, Prof. Saya Zaidi. As a leader, at many times we need to make unpopular decision. And sometimes we do not know that are we taking the right decision. So can you give us tips, guidelines, how to make sure at least we are sure that we are taking the right decision?
I would say this, yes, I understand you very well. As a leader, you're going to have to make decision. There is one area of decision making that you cannot compromise, that you have to become very authoritative on. That is when it comes to principles. You know, for example, when we talk about the principles of integrity, the principles of the principles of truth, that one you tak boleh compromise lah. Okay. Tetapi kalau misalnya kata yang berkaitan dengan kemanusiaan, right, where doesn't sacrifice the principle, that you can practice compassion, right. For example, tak boleh datang kerja hari ni sebab anak kat rumah tak sihat, and I really have to handle. I'm the only one in the house now. That you have to practice compassion. Okay. Tetapi kalau misalnya kata ada satu satu keputusan yang nak dibuat yang melibatkan the sacrificing of the principles of integrity, yang itu tak penting. That one you have to be authoritative. Like it or not, if you have done wrong, if you have quote unquote sorry to say that you have committed this mistake and this mistake involves integrity, I have to decide. Unfortunately, I have to decide on that. Yeah. So there are two dimensions. When it comes to principle, be authoritative. But when it comes to humanity, be compassionate, because everybody got their own sets of problems, which you can be of an assistant to make it better for that person. Yeah. So I will take as itu. When it comes to institutional principle, when it comes to professional principle, that one kita tak boleh nak sacrifice. Unfortunately, no? Unfortunately, I don't know. I hope that helps. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Professor. So last call, is there any other question that the audience in the Google Meet want to ask?
Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam.
I have a question about leadership. From my experience in campus life, we learn about leadership theoretically, but actually when we face the real situation in our life, we face that sometimes leadership is very tough, and sometimes we make mistake. So what is the preparation for the students actually to be ready to face the leadership in the future? Thank you, Prof.
Okay, of course, when we ask students to work on projects, lead projects, okay, we are actually training the student to lead something, to lead on getting things done. Yeah, and some of them may go through a very easy journey because everybody cooperates, right? Everybody, for example, helps each other out. But there are also some who face the real challenges of trying to first convince that person to believe in the cause of the project. You know, because if you get people who don't believe in the cause of the project, commitment is half-hearted, or no commitment, or they just show as if they're committed, but they are not actually. You know, so but the thing is, these are the lessons that I think we need to expose the students to, because those are the real things that happens when the student, especially when the students goes out there in the world. Yeah, those are the real things. So as real as possible, we try to make it happen. Community project is one thing yang I really admire. If we can embark. As simple as gotong royong sehinggalah kepada providing teknologi itu pada orang kampung, for example. Katalah pergi ke masyarakat orang asli nak letak satu hydroelectric power driven energy supply menggunakan sungai tu. Sedangkan sungai tu orang asli ni duk guna untuk tangkap ikan. You nak letak kat situ dia dah marah dah siap-siap dah kan. So if you expose the student to the real situation, well, listen, you may have a very strong knowledge on hydroelectric power, but you cannot make it happen until you resolve orang kampung ni punya masalah penerimaan hydroelectric power ni kan. So this is a real problem. It is not something, technology you memang handal lah kan. So the best is either you try to comprehend as a leader or you get somebody from the social science people, hey, how do I talk to this person? How do I convince this person? So in a way, you are training the student to face the real challenges, right? Fail, learn from that failure again, you know. So you wouldn't realize these are the intangible measurements of skills that the student will adopt. Yang you tak perasan, tak boleh nak kira 8 pas 10 ke 7 pas 10, you tak boleh nak kira yang itu masalahnya. Tetapi you can judge the intangible achievement, measurement of this by the way the student resolve that matter, resolve the problem. Boleh lah, he could convince lah that orang kampung tu macam mana nak masukkan teknologi penerimaan orang kampung, penerimaan orang asli sebagai contoh, kan? So kalau you tanya saya macam mana, sebab classroom interaction dia tak banyak sangat dapat nurture these attributes. Classroom banyak knowledge, kita pass knowledge kan, but you put knowledge into practice, nak tak nak kita kena banyakkan aktiviti experiential learning. This is what we mean by experiential learning. Dedahkan the real challenge of putting this knowledge into application. And then suddenly you will see a mist of apa orang kata, a host of issues rupanya kena handle. Tak cukup duit, rejection mentality, okay, and then design tu tak kena dengan water flow rupanya. So power generated not as expected. There is some inefficiency fall out from there, you know. So I think this kind of learning will make the student becomes more excited, and then suddenly the student gets excited, they will be very honest and sincere to themselves. Yeah, I don't understand how to make this happen, you know. So that is what we meant by inspiring the student. We inspire the student. The lecturers inspire the student, you know. Sebab tu I cakap student, belajar ni be honest to yourself. Okay, ini zaman-zaman ODN ni lagi senang nak meniru. Jangan meniru. Sebab bila you meniru, kita akan bagi markah menunjukkan betapa handal you meniru. Itu ke yang you nak. Right? You kena dapat markah yang menunjukkan betapa level kefahaman you dalam subjek tu. That's what you want. Right? Don't deceive yourself. Be honest to yourself. I think if you ask me what would be the elements that are most important to drive students to be inspired learning, is be honest to yourself. Be sincere to yourself. And try to instill that. And students too. Now, I'm not saying that we are the only one to say. You can inspire yourself to be honest to yourself about learning. Am I learning or not? Am I learning or not? You know? Then I think we could achieve to a better state of education. I hope that helps.
Assalamualaikum Prof. Saya tertarik, saya Dr. Nafiza. Saya tertarik dengan Prof ada share tadi berkenaan dengan hydroelectric power. Kita akan letak maksudnya macam projek dengan dengan orang asli. Sebab kalau ikut di Fakulti Kejuruteraan Awam, let me share our experience. Memang kita it's not that we do theory lah. Kita juga go for practical, that is we have a lots of engagement with the orang asli kan, projek-projek orang asli, dan kita memang melibatkan pelajar-pelajar tersebut. So sebelum pandemik ni we have lots of projek dengan orang asli, contohnya seperti membuat surau kan, sebab civil engineers kan kita, so and then satu lagi untuk acknowledge them on the water quality, because selalunya memang dia akan ambil air dia tu daripada sungai, tapi selalunya air sungai-sungai ni dia the quality actually for them memang dia nampak begitu segar kan, tapi in term of that dia ada how to say something lah that is akan go for dia punya disease or whatever kan. So that's why untuk kita for the student pembelajaran di luar bilik darjah tu memang kita pertekankan lah. So I think the student juga I think in this scenario mereka diterapkan dengan kata pembelajaran di luar bilik darjah lah, so that after when they are graduating, okay, they can serve, maknanya dia nampak, maknanya it's not only on theory basis, that is the calculation whatever, and then dia boleh nampak. So this is pemikiran di luar kotak lah yang kita persiapkan kepada pelajar-pelajar ini. Dan I think contohnya macam memang ada senario berkenaan dengan mereka tidak mahu macam hydroelectric power for example, but we try to macam tadi, macam Prof kata tadi kan, approach other way. Apa yang kita lakukan adalah sebenarnya orang-orang asli ni dia ada tok batin. So tok batin dia ni memang kita tadi that's the dia punya ketua leader dia kan. So when we approach the tok batin, the leader, and then from this chief, kita negotiate, and then kita bagi talk, and then after that dia akan disseminate to others, ni lah dia punya orang bawahan dia semua tu, and then dia orang menerima. So kebanyakannya macam I think pelajar-pelajar juga dilibatkan untuk ni lah perkara-perkara ini. So that's why banyak saya nampak UiTM, I think not only our faculties, our college, other college also done this kind of thing lah. So saya rasa pelajar-pelajar ni insyaAllah lah dipersiapkan dengan pembelajaran yang kita kata di luar bilik darjah ni lah. So very good perkongsian Prof, dan saya rasa pelajar-pelajar ni juga macam yalah, dengan situasi pandemik ni kemungkinan that way we need to change lah. Contohnya macam mungkin cara-cara kita kan memperbanyakkan webinar begini, and then the experience maybe we can bring the student, maksudnya going for case studies, discussion, so that they I think they can open their eyes on this kind of thing lah, for the experience.
It is important that you mentioned that in order to get through the community of the orang asli ni, you have to go through the tok batin. Okay.
Yes.
You act on that because you have that knowledge that the social structure of orang asli memang amat bergantung kepada tok batin dia punya pandangan, tok batin dia punya influence. Bayangkan kalau kita tak ada ilmu tu, kan? Kita cuba masuk aja, kononnya kita cuba nak convince. Then there will be rejection, right? So benda tu tak berlaku kan? So the social context, the social science context of that knowledge is also important. Aside from that technology knowledge on technology, as a leader lah, sebagai ketua, sebagai leader, not only you have the willingness to understand the technology involved, but more importantly, you are able to put that technology in the context of the other knowledges. Itu yang dimaksudkan oleh Ashwin tadi. Okay, how do you form that body of knowledge, kan? Sebab hydroelectric power ni dalam konteks orang asli mungkin pada dia tak ada lampu boleh tak kisah kan? Apa yang saya buat kan? So those are the kind of knowledge lah yang dimaksudkan oleh Paul Ashwin tadi, what education is all about. I mean, placing that context of knowledge in a bigger context that is related to that knowledge to make things happen.
Yes, I think one more thing, education need to be along our tradition ni lah, maknanya will not maknanya it have to walk along. Maksudnya sebab sekarang ni we did mention about sustainable long term kan, so long term sustainability for example. So as an innovator or as an engineer for example kan, bila kita membuat suatu project tu, that project should not against our long term sustainable punya agenda agenda lah.
Environmental
contohkan.
impact,
Yes.
how does it impact environmentally kan?
Yes, that's correct. Betul Prof. Betul.
Okay.
Itu sajalah sharing.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Kamal and Dr. Nohafiza for the sharing just now. All right, everyone, with the last question being answered just now, we have reached the end of our slot for today. Once again, thank you to our speaker, Professor Technologist Dr. Hj.Harun bin Hj.Harun, for being able to spend his time and share his precious thoughts with us today. So before we end our slot for today, students are reminded to fill in the attendance form by clicking the link or scanning the QR code that will be provided soon. So that's it for today. Thank you, everyone.
I hope it has been a very beneficial time for you to spend with me. I hope I'm not wasting your time. Harapan saya lah, I am of a benefit lah for this discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Sazali, for your kindness in joining us. He has got a lot more experience. You consult sekali depan ni.
Alright. It's a good begging. Kita ni kadang-kadang kita nak dengar juga pada orang.